The morning sunlight filtered through the dusty blinds, casting thin golden lines across the wooden floor of Rachel Monroe's tiny apartment. It had been only 5 hours since she'd stumbled back from her night shift at the emergency dispatch. Center her eyes sore, her head full of static. She was used to voices crying for help in the dark. What she wasn't used to was finding one of those voices whispering inside her own home. Her hand stopped mid-motion as she reached to grab her phone from the nightstand. There it was, out of place, small, white, folded, a piece of paper, tucked neatly under the corner of her pillow. She hadn't put it there. For a full minute, Rachel didn't move. Her heart thudded. Her eyes scanned the bedroom. Window locked, door dead-bolted. She lived alone, always had. The only person who had a spare key was her landlord, and he was 71, walked with a cane, and didn't even know her last name. She picked up the paper. It was a torn sheet from an old notebook, faint blue lines, the edges ragged. Her fingers trembled as she unfolded it. For words, "I saw you scream." Her breath caught in her throat. It wasn't the words that disturbed her. It was the handwriting. She recognized it. It was Mark's, Mark Everett, her ex, the man who vanished 3 years ago without a trace, the man the police assumed had skipped town, the man she tried to forget until now. Her mind spiraled. She had burned all of his letters, every notebook, every photo. She had gone through that madness, that grief, the late-night paranoia. She had started again. He was gone, dead, or as good as. But now he was back. Or someone wanted her to think he was. Rachel stood and opened the bedroom door cautiously, checking every corner of the apartment. Nothing was out of place, except the single rose left on her kitchen counter. No vase, just lying there, fresh and red like a wound. Her skin turned cold. Mark used to do that to leave roses instead of apologies, but no one had come in. The bolt was still drawn. The camera in the hallway, the one she convinced the landlord to install after a break-in, scare me tav, caught something. She rushed to check her laptop. The hallway feed at 2:31 a.m. A man in a dark hoodie passed by her door. He paused, turned toward the peephole, and then smiled. Just for a second, as if he knew she'd be watching it later. Then he was gone. Rachel backed away from the screen. That smile, she had seen it 100 times. It was Mark's smirk, sarcastic, secretive, slightly crooked. But the man on the footage was older, leaner, with something wrong in his eyes. She dialed the police, reported it. Officer Durant came by, took her statement, glanced around, and nodded sympathetically. But there was nothing to charge, nothing. Stolen, nothing broken. Could be a stalker playing mind games, he muttered. Let us know if anything else shows up. But something already had. That night, Rachel didn't sleep. At 3:14 a.m., she heard a knock, not on the front door, on her closet door, slow, deliberate. 3 times. She grabbed her phone, flashlight app already open, hands shaking so violently she nearly dropped it. She opened the closet. Nothing except her old diary. One she hadn't opened in years. It was resting on top of her winter coats, pages slightly open. She picked it up and flipped through. It should have been filled with poems and pain from her college years, but the middle pages were gone, ripped out, replaced with photos of her sleeping, one each night over the past 6 nights, and in the corner of each one, barely visible, was a shadow, watching her, closer each time. She slammed the book shut and ran out of the apartment barefoot, not even bothering to lock the door behind her. She didn't stop until she was at Durant's station, breathless, clutching the diary like it was the only thing tethering her to reality. Durant frowned as he opened it. But the photos weren't there anymore, just pages and pages of bad poetry and ink stains. Rachel felt something break inside her. Was she losing her mind? Durant offered her a glass of water, asked if she had anyone to stay with. She told him no. He nodded and suggested maybe a counselor, maybe stress, maybe grief resurfacing. But when Rachel returned home, she found something taped to her mirror, a Polaroid. It showed her standing in the police station, holding the diary just minutes ago, written in Sharpie across the bottom. Told you, I'm closer. She dropped the photo, stepped back, and that's when she noticed the blood, a single drop, trailing from under her bed. Still fresh, she grabbed a flashlight, crouched, and shined it beneath. There was a message, scrawled in red across the wooden floor, hastily scratched with what looked like a broken nail. 7 clues, 7 days, or someone else screams. And just behind that, a severed finger, still, warm. Rachel didn't scream. She couldn't. Her throat had locked up, the air around her thick and electric, like the moment before a lightning strike. She stared at the finger, motionless under the bed, as if blinking would make it disappear. But it didn't. It was real pale, ringless, and freshly severed. Her stomach twisted. The smell hit her neck's metallic, faintly sweet, unmistakably human. She backed away on all fours, still holding the flashlight, heart racing so loud she barely heard her own breath. She should call the police again. Tell Durant, but the message, carved into the floor, stopped her. 7 clues, 7 days, or someone else screams. This wasn't just a threat. It was a game, and she was the prize. Rachel forced herself up, grabbing gloves before slipping the photo into a plastic Ziploc. Then she picked up the finger using a towel, wrapped it, and placed it in her freezer. She didn't know why. Maybe panic, maybe instinct, but a part of her knew the police wouldn't believe her if she called again. Not after the photos disappeared. Not after the diary rewrote itself. No, she needed proof. Something solid. She sat on the couch, staring at the photo taped to her mirror. Her reflection looked hollow now. But her eyes burned with the memory of Mark's voice. Want to know what I'm thinking? He once said, sitting beside her during a thunderstorm, sketching spirals into a notepad. Look at the spaces between my words. That's where I hide the truth. She never knew what he meant. Not until now. Rachel grabbed the Polaroid again. Behind her in the photo, a blurry figure sat at a desk near the station entrance, facing away. She zoomed in. That jacket. She'd seen it before. A torn leather shoulder, burn mark near the collar. That was Durant's jacket. But the time stamp didn't match. That jacket was burned 2 months ago in a station fire, Durant had told her. Himself lost half my closet that night. So how was he wearing it in the Polaroid taken tonight? Unless the Polaroid wasn't from tonight. Unless someone had taken it before. Her hands trembled. She laid the photo down and turned to the rose on her counter. Fresh, too fresh. Still moist at the cut. She grabbed it, checked the stem. No thorns. But something was etched in the green just below the flower, carved delicately with a razor-thin blade. Clue 1. Under what you forgot. Rachel froze. Under what she forgot. She sprinted to the hallway, pulled open the narrow storage closet, and stared. Boxes, junk, things she hadn't opened in years. There beneath a box of old records was a shoebox marked college. She opened it. Inside were pictures of her and Mark, a photo booth strip from their first date, a silver bracelet he gave her with her name misspelled on purpose. She almost smiled. Almost, at the bottom, wrapped in an old t-shirt, was a cassette tape, labeled, "Don't Listen Alone." She didn't have a player, but the pawn shop 2 blocks down might. Rachel ran through the morning mist, heart pounding, eyes scanning every window. She felt watched, but no one followed. The pawn shop was dimly lit, the owner half asleep behind the counter. She barely breathed as she slid the tape across the glass. He blinked. "Where'd you find this?" Rachel paused. "You recognize it?" He nodded slowly. "Guy came in months ago, dropped off a box of these. Said they were audio diaries from the asylum up north. Weird stuff. I threw most of it away." She swallowed. "Do you still have a player?" He disappeared in back. A minute later, he returned with a dusty Walkman and headphones. "Good luck," he muttered. She left a 20 and walked to the park nearby, sat under a rusted slide, and hit play. The tape crackled. Then a voice emerged. Mark's voice. Day 1. Observation. She doesn't remember. That's good. Means the treatment worked. But she still looks at mirrors like they might whisper secrets. I have to move fast before they tell her. Rachel's blood turned to ice. She pulled the headphones off, stared at the tape. What treatment? She rewound, pressed play again. Day 1. Observation. She doesn't remember. But the voice was different this time. Softer, female. You made me forget. You made me bleed. Now I'll remind you. She yanked the headphones off again. No, something was wrong. Rewound, pressed play a third. Time. Silence, then static, then something breathing. She hit stop. That night, she locked every door, blocked the windows, slept with a knife under her pillow. When she awoke, the tape player was gone. The Walkman, the cassette, all of it. But in its place, on her nightstand, was her second clue. A page from her old sketchbook. She hadn't drawn in years. The page showed a crude outline of her apartment. A red X marked the bathroom tiles, and scrawled at the bottom, written in the same handwriting as the last clue. Clue 2. You knew once. You hid it from yourself. She stood and crept to the bathroom. The tiles were clean, white, nothing out of place. But she remembered something. The floor tile in the back right corner, just under the sink, was loose. She pried it up with a spoon. Beneath it, wrapped in black cloth, was a tooth. Not hers. Not human. It had metal sutures fused into the root, almost like her breath caught. The doorbell rang. Once, then silence. She crept to the door, peeked through the PEEPH. No one there. But when she opened it, a small cardboard box sat waiting on her welcome mat. She stepped back, arms shaking, and opened it. Inside, she found the Walkman, the cassette, a photo of herself, sleeping again this time, with her hand reaching toward the knife beneath her pillow, and a note, written in blood. You've got 5 days left, Rachel. And one of them ends with you screaming. Rachel didn't leave her apartment for the next 16 hours. The Walkman sat untouched on the counter, like a bomb she didn't dare defuse. She checked every inch of her play stores, windows, closets. Nothing new. But that only made it worse. Whoever was doing this had already been inside. More than once, she played the tape again, Nothing but breathing this time. Long, slow, measured, like the person on the other end was savoring the sound of her fear. At 2 a.m., her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Do you remember the basement? She dropped the phone like it had burned. No, that was a memory she had buried. The basement, Mark's old place, his parents' house before they moved to Florida. The one with the padlocked door. She'd only been there once. He said it was his darkroom, that he did photography. Work down there, film development, chemical stuff. But she remembered the screaming, not from her, from behind the door. She'd asked him once. He smiled. Audio experiments. She never asked again. Now, standing in her own hallway, Rachel stared at her reflection in the mirror. Something felt wrong, not just about the game, about her, about the way her memories didn't line up. The tooth, the sketch, the diary that changed. She felt unmoored, like pieces of her life were being edited without her consent. She went to the bathroom again, dug up the metal-rooted tooth and placed it under the brightest light she had. Her eyes scanned the grooves, and there it was, etching, tiny, almost invisible. Subject R14, memory phase 3/7. She felt sick. She wasn't part of a game. She was the experiment. The phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Go to the basement. Before I send someone else's scream. The message was followed by a photo. A woman, gagged, eyes swollen, tied to a metal chair in what looked like a moldy basement with green tiles. The same tiles Rachel remembered from Mark's old house. Except this time, the woman looked like her, but older, weathered, exhausted. Rachel blinked and looked again. It wasn't someone else, it was her. She drove to the old house just before dawn, adrenaline scraping her nerves raw. The place was abandoned. Windows boarded, yard overgrown. She climbed through a broken side window and moved through the dusty halls. The basement door was still there, padlock gone, hinges rusted. She opened it. The smell hit her first: mildew, rust, something rotten. She descended the creaking stairs, flashlight sweeping side to side. Clue 3 was waiting at the bottom. A voice recorder, sitting on a table with a thick layer of dust, disturbed only around it. She hit play. Day 3, subject R14, shows significant resistance to memory reimplantation. Scrubbed identities, re-emerging, dream state, echo, unstable. She may fracture. Then the sound of crying. Her crying. Rachel turned, heart thundering, light trembling in her hand. There were old photo frames on the wall, black canned white stills of her face, but distorted. One showed her smiling. Another showed her mouth sewn shut. Another had no eyes. In the far corner of the room, under a tarp, she found a mirror, dusty, tall, covered in words, like etchings from fingernails. She wiped the glass, and the reflection that stared back wasn't hers. It looked like her. Same hair, same eyes. But the face moved wrong, as if watching her, not mirroring her. Then the mouth in the reflection opened and words appeared across the glass. Clue 3, your memories are the prison. Break them and you'll see who I am. Rachel stumbled back, breathing hard. She turned to Runand, saw the figure standing at the top of the stairs. A man, wearing a hoodie, holding a blade. She bolted for the side exit, out through the garage. She didn't look back. Didn't want to see if he was following. She made it. To her car, tires spinning on gravel as she shot down the road. She didn't stop until she reached the city and pulled into a public library parking lot. She sat there, hands on the steering wheel until her breath steadied. Her phone buzzed again. A new number for left. Want your life back? Solve your past, or someone else dies instead of you. Attached was a photo. A newborn, wrapped in a blue blanket. The child's name tag read, Monroe. Rachel, infant unit, room 3. She had never given birth. She stared at the image, stunned. Had she? Rachel ran into the library, scanned the birth record databases using a guest terminal. After 2 hours of navigating health systems, she found something. Rachel Monroe, admitted to Black Hollow Sanitarium. 5 years ago. Patient type, surrogate trauma program, trial phase, discharged. No record, she never remembered being there. That evening, she returned to her apartment to find the walls covered in paper. Pages ripped from books. Diary entries she didn't remember writing. Letters in her handwriting to a man named Dr. A. Delphos. She pulled one from the wall. Dear Doctor, if I forget again, please let me. The screams I hear are mine. But they weren't meant to be. Don't let me wake up. Rachel turned slowly and saw the mirror across the room, the one above her, fireplace that the reflection didn't match. Her doppelganger, inside the glass, held something she didn't. A fourth clue, a video cassette. The reflection mouthed something, play it, or you'll never know who's screaming next. Rachel turned to the mantel, and there it was, the same tape. She hadn't put it there, but she already knew. She would play it, even if it broke her, because her memories weren't just erased, they were rewritten by someone who wanted her to forget what she truly was. Rachel stared at the cassette for hours before touching it. Her fingertips trembled as they brushed the dusty black plastic. The label smudged, but faint letters still visible beneath layers of grime, 4 of 7, for her eyes only. She didn't own a VHS player, but there was one place that might. The University Media Lab, her old campus ID, still worked. She kept it out of nostalgia, maybe guilt. As she stood outside the main hall's back door, memories scraped at the edges of her mind mark, sitting under the old oak tree, sketching things she didn't understand. Her watching him from behind glass during that brief stint. He spent volunteering for the psych department's behavioral experiments. He said he was doing it to help people. He never said he was doing it to her. The lab was empty, lights flickering low. She pushed the tape into the player, hit play, and the screen stuttered to life with static. Then a camera view. A white room, bright lights, a hospital bed. Rachel on it. No, not just Rachel. Rachel screaming, strapped down, eyes bloodshot, foam at the corners of her mouth. Her voice broke into guttural sobs. A male figure in a lab coat leaned in and whispered something into her ear. She couldn't hear it. She turned up the volume. Still nothing. Then the image shifted. A close-up. Her own face, slack-jawed eyes rolling back. A monitor flashed behind. Her memory isolation, trial number 14, induced trauma loop, stage 4. Next to it, a graph that pulsed in time with her screams. And in the bottom right corner, the date, March 17th. 3 years ago, the same day Mark disappeared. The screen cut to black. Then a new scene. A dim room, barely lit, a man's voice speaking directly into the camera. Rachel, if you're watching this, then it means they failed to keep you under. She knew that voice. Mark. He leaned forward, eyes ringed in shadows, face thin and desperate. You volunteered, but they never told you what for. They said you were helping soldiers, healing their minds, But you weren't healing anyone. You were absorbing their trauma, wearing their memories, living their screams. The project turned you into a reflection of everything broken in them. He swallowed hard. You kept asking about the girl in the room next to yours. But she wasn't real, Rachel. She was you. You split fractured. They used your pain to map out fear. I tried to stop them. They took me instead. The screen glitched, a brief flash of red, then more static. Rachel reached out and slapped the side of the monitor. The image jumped. Now it showed a chair, empty, blood smeared across the floor. Another message appeared on screen. Clue 4. You died already. They just didn't bury you. Rachel pulled the tape out and stumbled backward. Her hands were shaking violently now. Her own voice echoed in her ears, not from the tape, but from her past. A memory? No, a scream. A time she couldn't explain. When she woke up in a room that smelled of ammonia and bleach, her body trembling, her skin stitched along the spine. She had told herself it was just a panic attack, a night terror, but now she knew. That was the night she fractured, and they never put her back together. She fled the lab and drove home, feeling like the city was watching her. The sky, the lights, the cars, everything unfamiliar now, like she was a foreign object dropped into a story she didn't write. When she opened the door to her apartment, the lights were already on, but she had turned them off. A trail of torn photographs led to her bedroom. She followed. Each photo showed her at different ages, 10, 17, 22. In each one, something was wrong. Her eyes were always looking somewhere else, always to the side, as if distracted by something just outside the frame. And on her bed, Clue 5. An envelope. Inside, a printed document. A therapy transcript. Session 19. Patient Rachel Monroe. Dr. Adelphos. Doctor, do you remember the event now? Rachel, I hear her crying, but I don't know where she is. Doctor, there is no her. Rachel, you are hearing your own past. Rachel, no, she's in the walls. Doctor, let's move forward. The transcript ended there, but scrawled in red pen at the bottom. Clue 5. The girl in the walls was your real name. Rachel felt like she was choking on memory. She ran to her closet, dug through the corners, found an old shoebox with locks on it. She had kept it hidden for years, a relic of a breakdown. Inside was a document she'd forgotten existed, a change of form, filed 7 years ago. Birth name, Eleanor Rowe. She didn't recognize it, but her signature was there, and next to it, signed by Dr. Adelphos. Why had she changed her name? Who was she before Rachel Monroe? The lights flickered, her phone buzzed. A new message. No number. You're almost there. The truth is just under your skin. An image followed, her own back. A recent photo. Someone had lifted her shirt while she slept. Carved between her shoulder blades were 7 tiny numbers, like surgical etchings, R14 to 6. The real you knows who died. She reached behind herself, touched the area. It burned. Her head swam. The breathing started again, not hers. Someone was in the apartment. She turned. Standing in the hallway mirror was her reflection. But this time, the reflection was crying, not out of fear, out of relief. Then it whispered, without moving its lips, Clue 6 is inside the man you buried. Rachel collapsed to her knees, tears falling, because there was one secret she had never told anyone, not even herself. 3 years ago, she had buried Mark. Rachel didn't remember killing him, but she remembered the shovel, the wet earth, the sound of bone breaking beneath metal. She remembered the blood soaking through her jeans, the forest fog curling like fingers around the trees, and the whisper in her head that wasn't her own, saying he deserved it. She had buried Mark in the woods behind Black Hollow, the old sanitarium now sealed off by rusted gates and vines. It was where they said she had volunteered, where she had been treated, where the screams never stopped. The memory surged like a black tide, ripping through years of denial. She had buried him. But now Clue 6 said he was holding something inside him. Rachel had no choice. She packed a duffel glove's flashlight, a cheap folding shovel, drove through the night with the windows down, the wind unable to cool the firestorm unraveling in her mind. Her hands shook the whole time, but not from guilt, from truth, the kind that changes you when it finally claws out of the dark. The Black Hollow forest was silent, as if even the animals had learned to fear what slept beneath the soil. She parked off the old gravel trail and followed the crooked path to the burial site. The ground had healed, grass grown wild, trees leaning in like voyeurs. She started digging. Each shovel of dirt sent fragments of memory flickering behind. Her eyes Mark shouting, begging her to remember. Her holding the cassette, him saying, "You don't want to wake up." She had woken up anyway. After an hour, the shovel hit something solid, wood, rotten, broken. She dropped to her knees, peeled it open with her hands, gagging from the stench. Inside, the remains of a man, or what was left, bones, scraps of cloth, a hoodie sleeve, but no skull. Her breath caught. Where was his head? She scrambled through the loose dirt, heart pounding, fingers scraping over roots and damp rock until she found it buried separately, wrapped in black plastic. A surgical bag. She ripped it open. The skull had something jammed into the eye. Socket, a small glass capsule. Inside, a micro SD card. Taped to the back of the jawbone was a note, ink faded with time. Clue 6. The truth isn't in me. It's in who made me do it. Rachel sat back, chest heaving. She hadn't killed Mark because she wanted to. She had been programmed to. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number, plug it in. She didn't ask. How they knew. She drove to the nearest gas station, borrowed a USB adapter from the attendant, and inserted the SD card into a laptop. One video, she hit play. Static, then a white room. Her sitting calmly, wired to machines. Across from her sat Dr. Adelphos. His face was shadowed, blurred by the low resolution. Dr. Delphos, do you understand what this means? Rachel, yes, I accept the surrogate trauma. Delphos, say it clearly. Rachel, I will take the screams of those too broken to survive them. I will absorb them. I will carry the pain, Delphos. And if you remember, Rachel, then I destroy the memory. Delphos leaned forward. What happens if the real you wakes up? Rachel on screen smiled. But it wasn't a kind smile. She'll kill whoever told her to sleep. The video ended. Rachel stared at the screen, cold sweat dripping down her spine. This wasn't about therapy. It was a covert experiment. They didn't erase trauma. They displaced it. They took the shattered minds of veterans, murder victims, hostages and gave their memories to her. She was a vault for pain. And Mark was the one who tried to set her free. He didn't die because he was a monster. He died because he tried to break the program. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. You only think you buried the right man. Another image. A live video feed. Someone inside her apartment. A figure. sitting on her couch, wearing Mark's hoodie, holding a scalpel. A text followed. Clue 7 is waiting. Don't be late, or the one screaming tonight won't be you. Rachel didn't think. She ran back to the car, back to the city. The drive blurred traffic lights bleeding into one another, the radio spitting white noise, her knuckles white around the wheel. When she burst into her apartment, the lights were off, but someone had lit candles. All over the room, on her bed, neatly folded, was the hoodie, the same one from the forest. But the figure on the video wasn't here. Not anymore. A note sat where he had been. Clue 7. Look in the mirror and ask her what you buried. She remembers now. She's always remembered. Rachel turned slowly to the mirror above her fireplace. Her reflection didn't match. Not in movement, not in breath. The version of her inside was weeping. And then it mouthed the final words. You didn't bury Mark. You buried me. Rachel collapsed, hands over her ears, screaming because now she remembered the truth. Mark didn't die. He helped her kill Eleanor Rowe, her original self, the innocent girl who volunteered for the trial. She had fractured splittened. The side that survived was the one who killed the pain instead of carrying it. She had buried her past. Now it wanted out. Rachel didn't sleep. Couldn't her mind was a battlefield, every memory now suspect, every flash of emotion laced with doubt. She sat on the edge of her bed as the candles slowly burned out one by one, the shadows creeping back in. The reflection in the mirror had returned to normal, but she no longer trusted it, or herself. She remembered it all now. Eleanor Rowe had volunteered for the surrogate trauma trial, believing she could help others. She thought she was strong enough to carry their darkness without it corrupting her. But pain doesn't stay quiet. It multiplies. It rewrites. It crawls inside your brain and whispers until you forget who you ever were. Eleanor didn't survive. Rachel did. Rachel was the product of that. Pain, not a new person. A reaction, and Mark had known. He had tried to protect what was left of Eleanor. He had hidden files, buried evidence, tried to shut the program down until Rachel realized. He was the last thread connecting her to the truth, and she severed it. But now someone had brought it all back. And they were still watching, still testing. She pulled the final clue back from her pillow. Clue 7 and, read it again. You didn't bury Mark. You buried me. Rachel looked at herself in the mirror and asked aloud, then who am I now? The room trembled. Her phone buzzed. Another message. This one from a number she hadn't seen before. Dr. A. Delpho's active. You were never meant to wake up this far. The experiment was concluded. We buried her. You were just the cleaner. The result. She stared at the message, heart pounding. A second one arrived instantly after, but something broke. A scream that never ended. That's why the program restarted. You were always supposed to scream last. Another image came through. This one froze her blood. It was a scan of her brain real-time MRI footage. The caption, cortex divergence detected. Then came the live feed. From her own apartment, but not from inside. From inside her head, a camera angle that didn't exist. Unless it was recorded during surgery. Unless someone had been in her mind. Another text followed. Welcome to Phase 8, Rachel. Dropped the phone. Everything was a lie. Even waking up. Even remembering. She turned toward the closet. Inside, behind the coats, she found the one thing she swore she had never owned: a surgical case. And inside Files, photos, footage, not just of her, of others, other Rachel S., other subjects. Faces marked with variations of her own expression: rage, grief, madness, some smiling, some dead. And in the final folder, row protocol, iteration, 14 status, active, terminate, on awareness they hadn't planned for her to get this far. The moment she fully remembered she was a threat, a message tone broke the silence. She picked up the phone with a trembling hand. Unknown number, they're on their way. Run, or let them finish the job. Attached was a GPS coordinate. She followed it. The location, Black Hollow Sanitarium, but deeper below AA. Section marked, Ward 0. It didn't exist on any map. She drove into the night, headlights off, parked far from the gates, entered through the same side window she had used days ago, but this time she went down, past the basement, past the rotted wards. She found a hatch hidden behind a rusted shelf. The metal groaned, resisting her, but opened with enough force. A narrow stairwell led into the dark. She descended. Deeper. The air turned thick. Mold, metal, echoes. Then the hallway opened. Into a chamber, white walls, fluorescent lights, buzzing, and in the center 7 chairs. Each one occupied, each one holding a version of her. Identical, women, eyes open, none of them blinking, each hooked to machines. Data streaming across monitors. She staggered back. They weren't just memories, they were copies. She hadn't just absorbed trauma, they had replicated her to contain it. Then came the voice from the intercom. Hello, Rachel, or Eleanor, or whichever name makes you feel safer today. This is your final test. Choose one to replace you, or they all wake up. She couldn't breathe. The lights dimmed. The door behind her locked. On the screen, a timer appeared. 10 o'clock, a countdown. She approached the first chair. This version of her was crying, silent tears rolling down pale cheeks. The seconds, miling with blood on her hands. The third, muttering to herself. The fourth, catatonic. The fifth, gripping a scalpel. The sixth, whispering names she didn't recognize. The seventh was her. The same clothes, same breath, same heartbeat. It mirrored her exactly. She turned to the camera above the monitor and whispered, I won't choose. The intercom crackled. Then you'll all burn, and humanity can keep screaming alone. The timer hit 0:03. She reached behind her and pulled the emergency lever near the power grid, yanking it with every ounce of strength she had. Sparks, darkness, alarms, and screams not from her, from them. The facility shook. Doors unlocked. Emergency lights blinked to life. Sirens howled. Rachel ran up the stairs, through the hatch, out the window. The building behind her collapsed in flames, as if trying to erase every horror it once held. She didn't stop running until sunrise broke over the horizon. Rachel stood on a hill, looking down at the smoke curling into the morning air. A new message came through on her phone. This time, no number, no name, just one final line. You screamed last. The experiment is over. Rachel didn't feel the relief she thought would come. Not as the fire devoured the facility behind her. Not as the sun lit up the forest like it had never seen horror. She stood on the ridge, shoes soaked with dew and ash, as sirens wailed far. Behind her, distant and fading, but the message echoed louder than everything else. You screamed last. The experiment is over. But she knew better. Experiments don't end when the subjects escape. They end when the data stops being useful. And Rachel knew Eleanor was still breathing, still remembering, which meant someone was still watching. She checked the phone again. The message had vanished. So had all the others. Even the ones from Delphos. Even the photos. Gone. As if her phone had reset. But the scratch behind her ear told her otherwise. She remembered now what it really was. A micro-injector. They'd implanted her with something. Long ago, she pulled over on the drive back, found an abandoned rest stop, and searched every inch of her phone with a screwdriver from the glove box. In the battery compartment, hidden in the shielding, she found it, a chip, still warm, still blinking. She threw it into a storm drain. Then she drove on. She returned to the city by nightfall. Her apartment a war zone of memory and madness. She burned everything, every file, every Polaroid, even the mirror above the fireplace. Her hands blistered, eyes stinging, but her mind felt sharp. For once, until the knock came. 3 gentle taps on her front door. She froze, then opened it. No. One there, but on the ground. A child's drawing, crude, scribbled with red crayon. It showed 2 stick figures, one taller, one smaller. The smaller one had X's for eyes. Beneath it, "You buried me again." Rachel stumbled back, stomach knotting. No, she'd ended it. Hadn't. The next morning, she went to the only place that still felt real, the city archive. Down in the basement, behind miles of yellowed files, she requested one name, Adelphos. The clerk frowned. That's restricted, but, hold on. 15 minutes later, he returned with a sealed envelope. Only record left. Almost got deleted during the Black Hollow fire. Inside, Rachel found a single sheet. Delphos Adrian, deceased. Date of death, March 17th. Cause, blunt force trauma. Incident location, Black Hollow basement. The date it was, the same day she woke up for the first time. She flipped the paper over, handwritten note on the back. If this reaches her, tell her I'm sorry. She wasn't supposed to remember, but she was always stronger than we realized. Signed, M.E.Mark. Her breath caught in her throat. She stood there for a long time, staring at the note. Everything inside her wanted to grieve, but she couldn't, because something still didn't add up. Delphos was dead. The tapes were destroyed, the data gone, but the voice from the final clue, the one that whispered, "You didn't bury Mark, you buried me." That voice didn't sound like her, it sounded like a child. That night, Rachel returned to the forest, to the site where she had dug up Mark's body. The grave was still disturbed, the casket empty. She shined her flashlight over the area. And then there, carved into a tree beside the burial site. Iteration 15 begins tomorrow. She fell to her knees. No, it wasn't over. She had been allowed to remember, because now she was a carrier, a vessel of all 7 clues. Her memories were the virus, and somewhere, someone was already using them to start it all again. Her phone buzzed one final time. No message, just a voice recording. A girl whispering, "Tag, you're it." The screen went black, and Rachel finally understood the last, cruel twist of it all. She wasn't the final subject. She was the control, the one they let walk free so the others would follow.